We have U.S. Admirals, including the head of Indo-PACOM, saying that the U.S. is ready and able to defend Taiwan. Dave, in one sense, I talked to my friends in the independent media, and everybody kind of knows that a war with, over Taiwan really isn't possible. But then the people that actually get to set the policy and carry this out, the generals and the think tank people, keep saying things like we need to, reverse our policy on Taiwan, and we need strategic clarity. We need to make it clear to China that we will defend Taiwan with force. And then we have the military actually coming out and saying they're ready to do it. And it seems insane. So, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, this is kind of you hear this from military leaders once in a while that they say that, the U.S. could defend Taiwan because there is a big part of the Hawks. The talking point is that we need to expand in the region so we can defend Taiwan, and they portray a Chinese invasion as kind of not imminent, but an eventual possibility or something that's going to happen within the next 10 years or so. But I mean, if you really think about it from both, angles, for the U.S. to defend a small island over in the Pacific, way over in the Western Pacific, against an invasion of a country as big as China, I mean, you would really need some serious resources in the region, which the U.S. has, but they want more. And so to say that the U.S. could defend Taiwan from a Chinese invasion right now, I don't know if that's true. I mean, everybody has their opinions on it. There's these war games that have been conducted recently by the U.S. that said the U.S. would lose, but then again, those are used to justify the expansion and the spending, so who knows. But the thing that people have to understand too is Taiwan is, I just called it a small island, but it's a pretty massive island, and for China to take it, it would be like the largest amphibious invasion of modern time. It would be really hard for China to take the island by force, especially the population of 25 million people, if they don't want to join China by force. So the idea that China is going to invade it, that would be their last option, the worst case scenario, I think, for China. So I don't think that they want to invade Taiwan anytime soon, but the way that the U.S. is handling everything now and sailing warships through the Taiwan Strait more and having more spy planes buzzing around their coast and, arming Taiwan. The U.S. has armed Taiwan since 1979, but it's kind of more sensitive now, and the U.S. is taking steps to open up diplomatic relations. So that is making the conflict more likely. When I don't think China would ever want to invade Taiwan, and Taiwan could be in a good position if they ever had to negotiate like a one country, two systems situation like Hong Kong. It would be different than Hong Kong because they're an isolated island and they do have they have a military. So, it's just not the situation that they portray it as. And, the more U.S. involvement in the region, the more likely a conflict is. So, but
Right.
It seems like these people are willing to risk nuclear war for Taiwan, which is just, something that should be unthinkable, a war with China.
Right. Yeah, so I guess, you make a good point there that it's kind of the capability that Taiwan has to, use their military to inflict a lot of pain on China that would deter China from really even trying to go this route. But, the point I think a lot of people make is that when you look on a map and you look at the size of China and the military capabilities of China, if they decided we're going to war over Taiwan, there might not be a whole hell of a lot the U.S. could do, seeing how far away we're based, especially when you think of like missile capabilities now. I'm guessing the U.S. would have to destroy like missile sites hundreds of miles into China in order to, feel secure having U.S. personnel on the island when there is a war or something like that. So, I mean, you know, you're talking about U.S.-China war, or U.S.-China war over Taiwan. And, you know, if we're talking about U.S.-China war, that's a different thing. But U.S.-China war for an island just off the coast of China gives a pretty strong advantage to China when you're trying to figure out what's going to happen here. Kind of just like if the U.S. and like the Soviets went to war over Cuba, I would have to imagine that the U.S., you know, would have been able to cut off the Soviet access to that island, you know, assuming they didn't go in nuclear war first. But you know, you're also writing up things going on in the South China Sea that aren't, you know, military necessarily. You know, we're not talking about war games or anything like that, but the U.S. is constantly trying to make new deals or cut deals between their allies, you know, sign new agreements, whether it's India, Indonesia, Australia, Japan, the Philippines, all these countries, Vietnam even, the U.S. is trying to increase all their ties with. So the latest one you have here at antiwar.com, Australia trade envoy seeks deal with India to tilt away from China. And I'm guessing there's some U.S. involvement in this. What all is going on here, Dave?
Yeah, so India, so for the United States and its allies, they all kind of see India as kind of the key to containing China, or whatever their goal is, countering Chinese influence, however they put it. And now, so this is Tony Abbott. He's former Prime Minister of Australia, and he's now a trade envoy for Australia. And he was in India last week, and he wrote an op-ed after that said, you know, they're trying to get a free trade agreement with India, and he described it as it would be the democratic world's tilt away from China if Australia and India sign a free trade agreement. You know, he called India a like-minded democracy. This is talking points coming out of Washington, and also even, you know, you see this stuff in Brussels, NATO headquarters. They say the same thing. They have their eyes on boosting ties with India. You know, Abbott said, basically India is the answer to everything China is India. If Australia put in the effort, Australian businesses put the same effort into India that they did in China, you know, over the past few decades, then you know, everything would be solved or whatever his idea is. And, you know, this is just all part of the shift. And Australia is part of the Quad, which we talk about a lot. It's India, Australia, Japan, and the U.S. You know, they're holding more military exercises later this year. And, yeah, and it's kind of the deterioration, because Australia and China, I mean, they're major trading partners. And it's just in the past couple of years that things really have, that ties have really just deteriorated. And now they signed a free trade agreement in 2015 that Abbott actually oversaw as prime minister, which is kind of interesting because you see how quickly these things shift. So the Australians, they accused China of violating the deal. Now China has put tariffs on some Australian goods and stopped importing coal and stuff. But, you know, China, for their part, they're doing this because of just the rhetoric that's come out of Australia, and how they're following along with the U.S. And, you know, you see there's this think tank in Australia that, you know, a lot of these accusations against China about the Uyghurs, about Xinjiang, and come from Australia. And Australia is part of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance. So, and, you know, it's another place where the U.S. has military bases. They want to expand. They want a new bases in the region, but Australia, I think they would like something a little closer to China than Australia. So Australia is kind of their fallback plan, I think, because they're, you know, ready and willing for a new U.S. base. But yeah, it's another thing. India is just a big player in all this China stuff, and it's kind of scary because, you know, we know about that border skirmish that they had with China, and India has nukes too. Last June, there was the fight between Indian and Chinese troops on the border in the Western Himalayas there. in a disputed area, and about 20 Indian troops died. I believe China finally said 4 or 5 of their troops died. And those are two nuclear powers, and the U.S. has stepped up military cooperation with India since, signed a new deal to give them access to satellite data so they can keep an eye on Chinese troops on the border. So, like a war breaks out there, that's a U.S. proxy war in a way.
So I have some questions about that, because I think it has to be one of the fundamental problems for India, is on the list of American concerns about China. Very, 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 very last, and the one that people can't probably understand and probably don't care about at all, is the China-India border dispute. Intellectual property, Uyghurs, all that kind of stuff. No matter how true it is, Taiwan, Hong Kong, that kind of stuff. I feel like there's some, like, people say in like just the general American public, I think, cares a little bit about those issues, but whenever you start talking about what Aaron Margulies called the world at the top of the world, these mountains, what would an American care about it? Maybe India, that would have to, I think, be an issue for them. Is America willing to fight over their issues too? Because it seems like we really just care about the South China Sea stuff and all the more trade issues with the U.S.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, it's an issue I really, I'm not educated enough on, the history of their border dispute and stuff. And it isn't part of the talking points. Some of the hawks, like Steve Bannon or people like that, they mention India. He thinks India, I forget, he had a quote once. He said India is like the key to unlocking China or whatever, however he put it. So he thinks India is really important, and he's buddy with Modi's party and stuff. But that's true from India's perspective. What is the benefit of stoking more tensions with your regional neighbor and allying more with the U.S. on the other side of the world? I don't know, but they are, joining in on it. They deployed some warships to the South China Sea. I mentioned the Quad. They all drilled together last year, and it was November 2020, and the Indian-led Malabar exercises, they're called, and Australia joined them for the first time since 2007. All 4 countries held exercises together, and that was India's decision to allow Australia. And both of them, not just India, but I mean, just very recently, were afraid to send the wrong message to China. And that's why this Quad was disbanded shortly after it kind of was created back in 2006, 2007. So now it's you just see this big unified push. So yeah, that's what it's just good stuff to keep an eye on, because where is this going to lead? If they want to isolate China economically, which would be really hard to do, because China is, pretty much all of their top trading partners. So even Taiwan. So it's, it's where is this going to lead? How far can this really go is kind of something I wonder a lot. But it seems like they're all determined to maybe eventually decouple from China, which is when a war could really happen.